Timothy in Peoria, you are on with Noah and Matt. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome.
Matt, I also really appreciate your show because I feel like you give a pretty adequate response to kind of steelman the atheist argument to actually better have conversations with people whom I don't necessarily agree with, but it's always interesting to at least get their worldview.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
But basically, I guess my position is more along the lines that I think the Orthodox Christian worldview has more explanatory power for reality than the atheist worldview. I think that's a pretty good summation of my position.
I think I would agree, but I would change the wording.
Okay.
Because I would agree that it is, the atheist worldview makes no attempt to explain reality.
Right.
And the Orthodox Christian view does make an attempt to it. The problem is, I don't think that it has any explanatory power because we tend to explain the unknown in terms of the known, and Christianity attempts to explain a mystery by appealing to a bigger mystery.
Okay. So what you're saying is, from a more natural, like methodological, naturalistic standpoint, you would say that it's more of a either not trying to explain the things that can't necessarily be understood, or trying to explain the things that can't be understood by the things that we already know.
I'm not limiting it to methodological naturalism is the foundation of science and reason, and we're stuck there until somebody demonstrates that the supernatural is real and that we have some way to verify when the supernatural is causing something. I'm not ruling out supernatural causation. I'm saying that before you can posit a supernatural cause, you have to actually demonstrate why that should be considered a candidate explanation. And so far, nobody's even come up with a way that they could possibly demonstrate that the supernatural is a candidate.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Okay. So then with that, I guess, because obviously the Christian worldview takes more of a, I guess, metaphysical approach to the way in which we understand and explain the world. But in the same way, even with methodological naturalism, don't you still have some, I guess you could say, abstract or metaphysical concepts that have to be presupposed to take that route?
Yes. And the goal here is to presuppose as little as necessary. Like, in order for me to have any sort of conversation with somebody, I have to presuppose that we share a reality and are able to communicate. But that is the necessary presupposition. Is the fact that I can't demonstrate that maybe I'm making you up. Maybe I can't get past the problem of hard solipsism. I think there are potential solutions, and one of them is that at time zero, somebody describes a fact about the universe that I don't understand and am unaware of. At a later time, they explain it, and at a time after that, I get to a point where I understand it. And yet, after I understand it, I can go back and see that it was also the case at time zero before I understood it. And for me, it's far more plausible that I am in fact sharing a reality with someone who knew something I didn't and explained it to me than that I am engaged in a sort of schizophrenic self-deception of teaching myself something and or manipulating time so that it was also true in the past.
Got you. I mean, that's just a really good argument against any sort of, I guess, being closed-minded in any sort of meaningful fashion. I mean, that was really well said. But
thanks.
With that in mind, though, I mean, so saying that you try and keep the things that you presuppose to a minimum when, I guess, trying to better understand reality. I mean, you still have, so with that, what, I guess, with God being, I guess, the main ontological basis within the Christian worldview, would you say primarily reason and logic and basically uniformitarianism are the main concepts that are presupposed within methodological naturalism?
I wouldn't even presuppose uniformitarianism. Reason, acknowledging that reason is reasonable and that I share a reality with the people that I'm communicating with, that's probably about as far as I'd go with presuppositions. I think, as far as I can tell, everything else can be derived from that. It's not that I'm necessarily opposed to even, I mean, you could presuppose that there's a supernatural realm as well. I just don't see any justification for it, and I see plenty of good reasons why that's a bad idea, because throughout human history, every single time we have tried to answer a question by appealing to the supernatural and have later found out what the actual answer is, it's never been supernatural.
What is your operating definition of supernatural?
Not natural?
So not either.
Yeah, not just spooky movement at a distance or weird stuff like that, like magnetism. Sorry, Insane Clown Posse. It's weird, and maybe we don't completely understand everything about it, but it's something we can investigate and explore. And there's nothing within the natural world that would preclude the natural as an explanation. And so when we look at something like, how did Earth form? Well, we can study the formation from data and investigation. We can't; these things take far too long for somebody to just like observe start to finish. But we know of stellar explosions that create an accretion disk where the matter and gravity and collisions form to eventually become planets and planetoids, things like that. It doesn't mean that there isn't a God who physically formed the Earth. It's just that there's no reason to suppose that or consider it as a likely explanation given the available facts until such time as somebody demonstrates that there is a God and that he can actually do something like this.
So essentially it's everything that's matter or anything directly derived from matter? Well,
I mean, matter and energy. I mean, the physical things within the universe, I don't know that there's anything beyond that we could say exists. Certainly, we could talk about abstract concepts and stuff like, three. But when we're looking at the world and we want an explanation, like I was saying earlier, we would list known candidate explanations, and then we would also include unknown candidate explanations, provided there's a good reason for it. And you don't get to say this is the best explanation until you demonstrate why this is the best explanation. And the fact that the Christian worldview has at its core this entity that is sufficient to explain the universe doesn't mean that it's necessary and sufficient to explain the universe, because it's indistinguishable from me from saying it's magic or universe creating pixies did it. How do you tell between those? Which one is more likely?
I mean, would you agree to some extent that if one were to make an argument for God, it would have to essentially be a multivariable analysis of all the possible evidences for the God, and then you basically have to compile whatever evidences there are and see whether it actually makes the most sense to believe that God exists?
No, here's the thing. This is real simple.
Okay.
I have no idea what would be necessary to demonstrate that a God exists. I don't. In order to have that kind of knowledge, I would either already be able to do so or be godlike myself. I don't know what would be necessary. It's like saying, what evidence would be necessary to prove to you that ghosts exist? Because how do you rule out alternative explanations? I don't know what it would take. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying nobody's done it and nobody's come up with a mechanism and a method by which you could do it. So simply saying, hey, I was in bed and I woke up and there seemed to be this apparition in my room and now I believe in ghosts, I understand why you reached that conclusion, but I don't agree that is necessarily a reasonable conclusion. So I don't know what it would take to prove that a God exists. But I'll tell you this, and I've said it countless times before, some people in the audience can quote along with me. If there's a God, that God absolutely knows what it would take to demonstrate its existence and has not done so, which means that God either doesn't exist or doesn't want us to know he exists.
But doesn't that also presuppose that there's some sort of necessary determinism with a God that exists in that sense that doesn't necessarily allow for human freedom to choose if they would not want to necessarily, say, spend eternity in heaven with him, then he would allow for that fact? And
No, Timothy. So what you're doing is you're saying essentially that if God revealed himself to us in a way that was conclusive, we would no longer have the option to not worship, right?
No, that's not what I said. What I was trying to say is like, essentially, if God made it clear enough to understand that he exists, but not so clear that one could still, I guess, find reasons of their own volition to not believe in him because they don't necessarily like him or disagree with the moral standards that have been set up by him, that they would still find a way to justify it to themselves.
So, but do you think those people can fool God?
No, but that's not what I'm saying.
So like if God reveals himself to me in such a way that it's clear, and now I am convinced there's a God, and I really don't like him, but I understand that he can squash me like a bug, so I decide to play along. Do you think that's going to work?
No, and that's not what I'm saying.
Okay. So, well, it is. If you play, all right, I don't want to say that necessarily that is. So, and I don't want to deprive Noah of this, but I want to get to this point. What if God were to reveal himself to me right now, such that I had good, reasonable, evidence-based conclusions that there was in fact a God? What would be the problem with that, with regard to this paradigm of me and my soul and afterlives and all of that?
Well, again, I think this is in a sense putting ourselves as finite beings in a place of infinite knowledge. And
No. I'm asking what the problem is. I'm asking you what you think the problem is going to be with that.
Okay, can you just repeat it one more time? I may have just misunderstood.
Sure. God could reveal himself to me right now in such a way that it would be, I would have a good, reasonable, fact-based conclusion that God exists, correct?
Well, I guess from my position, I would say that there's already a good, reasonable fact-based.
I swear I'm going to hang up.
So we're trying to establish a precept here, man.
All I asked was, is God capable of fucking revealing himself to me clearly?
And if you think that he already has, then the obvious answer is yes.
Yeah, I don't care if you think he already has. You are wrong. You are wrong that God has done so to me. I'm asking if he can.
Yeah,
I'll give you a hint. He's omnipotent.
Maybe.
No, I said yes.
Sure. So God can. Why is it? What are the possible reasons that God has not done so? Now, you can say that he has, but you would be wrong because God has not revealed himself to me in a way that is conclusive. But God could definitely do so. Like, no matter how much I don't want to believe in God, because I know that's what a lot of people think, or anything else, it is undeniable that God would be capable of essentially forcing me to have to accept that he existed, right?
Yes, but
just
to clarify,
what would be the problem with that?
Well, and this is the thing. I don't think there's necessarily a problem with that, but that's
then why hasn't he done it?
And this is again where what I'm saying. I think you're misunderstanding my point that I was trying to make. My point was basically along the lines of, just because he could do something doesn't mean that's what he sees as best. Correct.
And just because I could feed my kids doesn't mean that I necessarily think I'm going to. But if I don't, that's my responsibility, not my kids.
I just don't understand. Like, God doesn't give me the option to believe or not believe in this coffee mug, right? Believing in this coffee mug is so much less consequential than believing in God. This is a proposition for which I can spend eternity in hell. Right. And yet he's going to be all, coy about his own existence. But the existence of gravity, the existence of magnetism, the existence of coffee cups, he has no problem throwing those out. Also, of course, in the Bible, he has no problem whatsoever depriving Moses of this. Right. He shows himself to all the Israelites under Moses, and then they don't believe in him. Right.
And Saul.
Yeah, exactly. So there are so many cases, if you follow Orthodox Christianity, where God has deprived people of that.
But that was, and you see this time and time again throughout the Christian scriptures, where they literally say that one hardened their own hearts, and then God basically affirmed them in their hardness of heart.
I can harden my heart as much as I want, and I cannot stop believing that coffee cup is sitting right there. I can pretend that I don't. I can dislike the coffee cup. I can refuse to do what the coffee cup tells me to do, but I can't stop believing that the coffee cup is there.
One can. I mean, and people do this. People do believe things contrary to what all common sense would say.
No. What you're talking about is you have a good reason to believe something, and you are convinced that somebody else has the same good reason to believe it. And when they don't, you're going to accuse them of hardening their hearts. Stop pretending you can read people's minds. I do it much better than you do.
I was saying I was talking about from a theological standpoint. I wasn't talking about from a practical standpoint.
Well, it also says that God himself hardened Pharaoh's heart. So he just kind of took away his free will. Pharaoh wanted to let him go, but God hardened his heart.
But that was after 3 other times of Pharaoh saying, where it said that Pharaoh hardened his own heart.
Yes, there are times where it says that Pharaoh hardened his own heart. But what that doesn't mean that Pharaoh said, that miracle I just witnessed that I was convinced was from God, I'm no longer convinced of that. It was, I don't care, I'm not going to let those people go. But then when he did enough little atrocities to convince Pharaoh, and Pharaoh was again ready to let those people go, God said, no, I'm not done showing off yet. I'm going to harden your heart, and now I'm going to kill every firstborn. Good God.
And regardless, if Pharaoh made the wrong decision 4 times in a row, then it's okay for God to take away his free will, whereas it's not okay for him to take away mine or yours, or
maybe we don't have any.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that he took away his free will. I said he affirmed him in his hardness of heart.
Okay, so we're way off track from the thing, and we've got definitely. 5 other callers. So the thing is, only question I'm asking is, clearly God could make it such that it was impossible for me to not believe that he existed, right?
Yes, but hang on. Okay, go ahead.
That has not happened, and your response is that God has revealed himself to everyone. I'm just, in denial?
No, that's not what I'm saying either.
Okay. Then why is it? Why don't I believe?
What I was saying is that he allows for people to choose not to believe him, and you
don't get to choose your beliefs. Beliefs are not a choice. He allows people, even scripturally.
I agree.
Even scripturally, right. I know I'm absolutely right. Even scripturally, it's not about choosing whether or not you believe. It's choosing whether or not you follow and worship. That's the choice.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. No, I completely agree with that.
So
actually.
if that's the choice, what is the problem with God just appearing to everyone, stop playing favorites, make it so that everybody has a good, we all even agree that we have a good, who's the president of the United States right now?
Oh, why'd you have to bring that up?
Because it's great.
Why did you have to bring that up?
So, is there any informed person on the planet? I would say that the overwhelming majority of people on the planet, given access to the facts, would all acknowledge that Donald Trump is president of the United States right now, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet that doesn't tell you anything at all about whether or not I think he's a petulant child douchebag, does it?
No.
It doesn't tell you whether or not I care what he thinks or says, or whether or not I would follow his instructions or anything else, right?
No, but
So the fact of there's nothing about God revealing his existence clearly that is problematic or for both the Christian paradigm or with regard, why isn't this something that we could not dispute? Why is there even any reasonable way for someone to say, you know what, you haven't made your case? And then the response is, well, God's revealed himself to everybody. He's put it on your heart. His works are evident, his unseen things in the things that we see in reality from Romans.
That's based. I think that's kind of a straw man of what I'm actually trying to say, though.
I'm going to point was, instead of all that, then let's hit a quick reset. You tell us exactly what you want to say, and I'm going to stop talking because I'm likely to run down 40 rabbit holes, and I'll let Noah address it, and then we'll move on.
Okay. I guess my main point was one of your points. Well, I guess one of your questions was about him revealing himself clearly, and why wouldn't he do that if he wanted us to know him? Correct? That was one of the main points.
Well, even regardless of whether he wanted us to know him, why wouldn't he do that?
Okay. Okay. Well, and this is where I would, and I know you'll disagree with this, but this is where I will say that I would say he did in the person of Christ, and there is evidence in the first few centuries reading through the literature.
Okay, so let's go to the first few centuries and check that evidence. If that's not possible, then there is no evidence. Right? If you and I can't go examine the evidence, there is no evidence.
Well, there's no, okay, I wouldn't say there's no evidence besides the historicity of Christ and the claims made from Christ. However,
okay, claims are not evidence, though. Those are two completely different categories of things.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I guess claims might have been the wrong word to use.
Okay.
The weight of the existence and the things that were beyond explanation that happened at that time.
But okay, so in order for me to accept that there are things that happen that are beyond explanation, I have to agree with your conclusion, right? You're trying to get me to agree with your conclusion. This is a circular argument.
By the way, if things are beyond explanation, then you can't propose that there's an explanation. I just want to throw that in there.
Good point.
Hey, this is unknown, and I know what it is. That's ridiculous.
Let me clarify. Beyond naturalistic explanation.
Right. But there is no evidence that anything without a naturalistic explanation happened unless I agree with your conclusion.
Not necessarily, no.
Okay, so what is the evidence that something that can't be explained naturally happened? Other than claims, which we agree are not evidence.
And go for 2, because we got callers to go to. Just no more than 2.
Okay. I would say some of the 2 of the primary things would, and I know you've already talked about this hour, would be the resurrection and the unique nature and novel nature of that after 3 days, and even details that were laid out about him being stabbed in the side with water and blood coming out, which we know shows that this person who was being attested to actually died on the cross.
Or that the person writing about it was familiar with crucifixion or death or stabbing people.
That detail, to throw that in there isn't inconsequential. It's not like they necessarily knew that.
Right. But it's not like the only way they could have known that is to watch Jesus specifically be stabbed on a cross.
Are you suggesting that nobody knew that after you run out of blood, you bleed water until Jesus?
No.
So we knew that beforehand. And so now are you saying that they only included that data because it actually happened and not just because they possibly wanted to convince people it happened?
I mean, are you saying that they knew that was a sign that the person had already died back then? That they're...
Well, it doesn't say that it's a sign that the people already died back then. It just simply says that it happened. All it would take is someone at some point having observed that happen. And of course, we all agree that Jesus wasn't the only person ever crucified or stabbed in the side with a spear, right? That's been going on for quite a while. This was a known thing about human beings when they die.
At that time?
Yeah, yes. People had stabbed people before Jesus.
No. I'm asking about the specific details about the water and the blood.
Right. But that is not presented in the Bible as proof that he was dead. It's simply an observation that exists in one of the Gospels.
Exactly, and it's an interesting observation considering they didn't necessarily have that knowledge at the time.
Holy shit! I literally just asked you this fucking question. I literally just fucking asked you if nobody knew about bleeding water until Jesus, and now that's the game you're playing. Goodbye.
Oh, man, we got really close to coffee cup denialism in that one.
I am not going to spend the bonus time with a guest with people who aren't going to argue honestly.